What is up everyone, Ethan here from the PixelArrowProductions, bringing back a series that has seen a bit of a brief hiatus on the channel for a little while recently. In case you've forgotten or are new to the series, this is a series where we go through each and every divine in the Imperial Pantheon, trying to prove that they could be considered the most powerful. This will eventually culminate in a video where we look back at the past arguments we've made and decide which is the strongest and thus which divine is truly the most powerful. As I usually say, this series is going to be helped by your comments and discussions in the comment section below, so feel free to agree, disagree, or mention a point entirely of your own. Now, with that all out of the way, today we'll be looking at the god of the cycle of life and death, Arkay. Before we look into just how powerful Arkay is, we need to know a bit about his background. There are many conflicting sources about Arkay in particular, so much so in fact that I can't really single out one as the most credible, so I'll be covering most of them here. Arkay, sometimes known as Arkay, is the god of the cycle of life and death, and is sometimes linked to nature's cycle of the seasons. He's also rather commonly associated with duality, for example joy and sorrow, kindness and anger, etc. His followers and worshippers staunchly oppose the foul art of necromancy, as its very existence defies what their lord stands for. Arkay and his followers see the cycle of life and death as a sacred thing that should not be interrupted. Arkay himself is said to guide the souls of those who are born into Mundus, and then guide their spirits from the mortal plane when they pass on into Aetherius. Onto those that pray at his shrines, he bestows a blessing to fortify their health. Some followers of Arkay refuse to offer aid or hinder anyone that comes to their priesthood in order to avoid upsetting the balance that Arkay brings. Arkay appears not only in the Imperial Pantheon, but in most other cultural divine pantheons as well. One story of Arkay's origins is that he was the son of Akatosh, born after the creation of Mundus. Another story suggests that he indeed was born after Mundus, but in this version, he was created by the other gods under the supervision of Lorkhan. Depending on what version of the creation story you hear, this can be a positive idea from Lorkhan or yet another one of his tricks to get the divines to lose your power. Thus, he is sometimes known as the Mortal's God. One of the most interesting versions of Arkay's origins is that he was once a mortal who studied the mysteries of life and death, and when he was so close to divining their secrets, he fell ill from the plague in his village. Mara took pity on him, and seeing that he was worthy, brought him up to the status of a god, with the condition that he would forever be confined to the subject of life and death, as it would be his domain as a god. Arkay accepted, thus entering his apotheosis. Some sources claim that this story is mostly allegorical, but by comparison with Arkay's Altmeri counterpart Xerxes, their origin stories are remarkably similar. Xerxes was said to have once been a priest of Auriel, and accepted apotheosis to become Auriel's personal scribe. Keep this in mind because it will come in later. Still another tale suggests that Arkay was one of the original spirits that were forged after the dawn of time, along with Auriel and the others, thus making him just as old, if not older, than most of the other divines that exist. It is difficult to tell which of these are true, but I can say with some degree of certainty that the tale that tells us that he was one of the original Aetric spirits is likely untrue. This is because being the god of the cycle of life and death before creation of mortals is quite impossible, seeing as the cycle of life and death doesn't really exist, or at least does not operate at all the same way for Aedra and Daedra. Arkay and his followers have a long history with necromancy and have sought to put a stop to the foul art, which defiles all that they and their god hold to be sacred. Tampering with the soul of an unwilling subject is a great injustice, and Arkay and his priests have made several attempts to thwart necromancy once and for all throughout the ages. One tale suggests that Arkay actually turned the souls of mortals black, thus making it impossible for practitioners of necromancy to trap and contain their souls in the normal white soul gems. This worked for a time, but necromancers found a way around this. Black soul gems find their origins around the time of the Interregnum, a period of great turmoil for the Roman Empire. They were brought into existence through a ritual known as the Shade of Revenant, whereby standard great and grand soul gems were manipulated by Mannimarco, king of worms. Some have been known to be created by lightning strikes in the soul cairn. The lore and history of the divines is steeped in myth and mystery, but assuming this is true, as we do with so many stories of the divines, this is a massive indication of Arkay's true power. To be able to actually manipulate the souls of all mortals at once is an immense feat. Mortals must spend years training to be able to have any small amount of power over mortal souls. The only other person who has come close to Arkay's mastery over the mortal soul is Mannimarco, the very one who thwarted Arkay's plans. However, even the King of Worms, foremost necromancer and first to achieve lichdom, does not come close to Arkay's command over the mortal soul. This solution to the problem was only a workaround, not quite a reverse. Next, I'd like to talk a bit about the creation, something that we've dealt with quite a bit in past videos in this series. Interestingly, it seemed to fit best to put Arkay's lore with the creation story towards the end of the video, but I digress. As we know and have reviewed in past videos, the Divines gave up some of their power to aid in the creation of Mundus. We've also seen that there are many different versions of Arkay's own origin story. To recap, there are 4 main versions of the origin myth. One that states that he is the son of Akatosh, born after the creation of Mundus, one that claims he was apotheosized from a mortal man by the god Mara, and another that states that he was created under the supervision of Lorkhan during the creation of the mortal plane, and yet another one that claims that he was one of the original Adric spirits before the creation of Mundus. This last version of his origin seems to be the least credible to me for reasons stated previously, which leaves the 3 other versions of his origin story, all of which have Arkay becoming a god after the creation of the mortal plane of Mundus. This, of course, makes sense, because Arkay's existence only becomes necessary with the existence of life, death, and mortal souls. It is difficult to tell which out of these is closest to the truth, for it's unlikely that any of them are exact, but once again, the main consistency is that he was born, for lack of a better word, after the creation of Mundus. This in turn means that Arkay would still be in full possession of all of his divine power, as he did not have to invest any of it in Mundus's creation. This would make him almost by default more powerful than his fellow Adra, with perhaps the exception of Talos. With all these topics in mind, it seems strange to consider that the god of mortals could perhaps be more powerful than his fellow Adra. Of course, none of this is set in stone, and most of it is pure speculation. I'd love to see your thoughts, ideas, opinions, and comments in the section below. Start a discussion with other viewers if you like, but apart from all of that, thank you all so much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, please don't forget to like and comment. Once again, thank you all so much for being here. I've been Ethan from the PixelArrowProductions, and I will see you in another video.